Hello everyone, welcome to NR Dialogue. Today we are focusing on the Latin America natural rubber industry. We are on the episode number 3. My name is Peram. I represent Technobiz. Before we start the program, I'd like to introduce about Technobiz. Many of you may have not complete familiarity about the Technobiz. I would like to introduce about the Technobiz and its activities. So let's have a look at the short presentation on the Technobiz. So that's about the Technobiz. I'm hoping that you have an understanding about what kind of services Technobiz offers. If you are interested in any of our services or events that you like to join, you can always reach out to me for more assistance or more information you need. Okay. Okay, let's get to our today's session on the NR dialogue on the Latin American natural rubber industry. We're on episode number 3. I'm pleased to invite and introduce our host today, Mr. Jacka. He's a rubber industry analyst, and he has been in the rubber industry for more than 30 years as a global rubber industry analyst with extensive experience in analyzing rubber market, forecasting industrial trends, and formulating long-term policies and development plans for natural rubber sector. He served the Association of Natural Rubber Producing Countries, we call shortly ANRPC, at Kuala Lumpur as its senior economist for 11 years. And also he worked for the Rubber Board of India in various positions for 23 years. So let's invite our host, Mr. Jacka.
Hi all. Welcome to the NR Dialogue, episode number 3. NR Dialogue is a virtual program. It provides the unique opportunity to closely understand the natural rubber industry in different countries. It's about a 1 hour long dialogue or an informal chat, I would like to say, with the prominent rubber industry leaders, researchers in each country. The objective of NR Dialogue is to extract information about the status of natural rubber industry in each country, get a clear picture of the future potential, understand the challenges ahead. It also helps to understand the support policies of the respective governments, opportunities for investments, opportunities for trade, opportunities for partnership or collaboration. There is only one episode in a month. We launched the program in January this year by having an enlightening discussion on the NR industry in Myanmar in January. In February, we had the second episode by spotlighting the success story of Vietnam's natural rubber industry. Today, we are here for the third episode of NR Dialogue. The third episode has a speciality. Instead of discussing on one NR industry, instead of discussing NR industry in one country, today we are having the discussion on the whole group of all the NR producing countries in the Latin America. There are 4 major producing countries in Latin America. They are Brazil, Guatemala, Colombia, and Mexico. So let us see, let's have an overview of the NR industry in the 4 countries. So we have the Brazil having 160,000 hectare of mature area or tapping area. Average yield is 1.25 ton per kilogram. Annual production is around 200,000 tons, and annual consumption is double the production, around 400,000 tons. Guatemala has 71,000 hectare of mature area. Average yield is 1.5 ton. Annual production is nearly 110,000 tons, and the consumption is very low, only 5,000. Mexico 32 is the 32,000 tapped area and nearly 1,200, 1.2 ton of yield, and the product is producing 38,000 tons, and the annual consumption of Mexico is 121,000 tons. Similarly, we have Colombia having production 12,000 tons and the consumption 27,000 tons. So these figures are preliminary figures for 2021 and subject to further revision. Now, before we begin the dialogue, let us have a quick glance into the NR industry in Latin American countries through a short video. Let us see the video. So that's a short video on natural rubber industry in Latin America. So maybe we have more videos. We will be seeing it later. Is it okay? We have more videos while we are having discussion. We will be having more pictures and more videos. Now, today, so that means from this video we got an overview. So now we are curious to know more detailed and grassroots level information about the NR industry in Latin America. We got an overview. The whole region, the entire Latin American region is a deficit of 47% in terms of NR supply. This is a message we are getting from the video. So today, three eminent personalities are joining today to share their valuable insights of the NR industry in the Latin America. Let me introduce and welcome them to this platform one by one. Let me first introduce to you Ms. Maria Pina. Maria has been the president of the Latin American Rubber Technology Society, having the acronym SLTC from 2017 onwards. That means for the last 5 years. She is the founding director of Voltex Group LLC, which is a company based in Pittsburgh, USA, and dedicated to the distribution of raw materials for the rubber industry in the US. Maria Pina is a chemical engineer having 25 years of experience in rubber industry, business management, entrepreneurship, and innovation. She has carried out research and development work on precipitated silicas, silanes, green tires, graphene, and end of tire tires. With immense pleasure, let us welcome Maria Pina to join us. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Jacka. Thank you.
Okay. Jogo Esbrandi is a popular name among the global rubber fraternity. Jogo is executive director of APABOR. APABOR is the acronym of NR Farmers, Natural Rubber Farmers and Processors Association of São Paulo, Brazil. Jogo's domain of activity is not confined to Brazil alone. He is also director of the Plantations Committee at SLTC, which is the Latin American Natural Rubber Association. Jogo is also responsible for the statistical monitoring program of the National Association of Natural Rubber Producers in Brazil, known by the acronym ABRABOR. As a renowned natural rubber market analyst, Jogo assists major producing companies, cooperatives, processing plants all over Latin American region. Currently, Jogo is Latin American procurement and Brazil sales specialist for Impol SA by assisting rubber trade within the region. Proudly presenting before you, Jogo Esbrandi. Let us welcome Jogo to join us for today's discussion. Jogo, you are most welcome.
Hello, John. Thank you very much for the invitation. Hello, Maria. Good afternoon.
Last but not least, I would like to introduce Mr. Pablo Dominguez from Guatemala. Pablo carries an amazing basket of professional skills. He's an engineer in renewable natural resources, specializing in management and exploitation of rubber trees in farms, management of natural resources, forest certification systems, monitoring, reporting and verification of carbon credits, registration and issuance of carbon credits. Pablo developed specialization studies in Sweden, Mozambique, Thailand, and Ecuador. Pablo is currently with the Plantec Rubber. Plantec Rubber is a consultancy firm actively involved in productivity, longevity, and cost and having operations in the entire Latin America. Mr. Pablo, you are with immense pleasure. Let us welcome Mr. Pablo to join us. I understand that Pablo has some issue with his camera, so we had to bear with this issue. Right now, we will anyway. Pablo will be able to listen to us and talk to us. Only thing, his camera has some issue today. Now we have the panel of the three eminent resource persons here to share their knowledge and practical insights in natural rubber industry in Latin America. Now, we are going to start the discussion. So before I start the discussion, Maria, Jogo, and Pablo, good morning to you all. May I know what time is now at your place? I am right now in India, south end of India, in the state of Kerala, which is representing 80% of India's natural rubber output. And at my place, time is 7:25 p.m. Thursday evening. And let me know what your time. What's your time zone right now? What's your time right now?
Here is 9:48 a.m.
Thursday morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, here in Brazil, São Paulo, we are at 10:45 a.m.
Okay, and Pablo, you can hear me?
Yes, I do, and my apologies for the camera trouble. I don't know why, but I am glad to be here with you. And here in Guatemala, it's almost 8. It's 10 minutes to 8 a.m. It's in the morning.
Okay, great. Okay. So may I, before we start the discussion, may I ask Maria, Joko, and Pablo, how was your initial entry into the rubber sector? If you don't mind, could you please share a little more about your journey so far in the natural rubber industry, or maybe the rubber industry as a whole, organizations you serve, and or your businesses in rubber industry so far, and your key positions as well as major contributions and achievement. Maybe you can briefly you can share with the audience your background, your journey, your entry.
Okay, I will begin. Okay, I'm a chemical engineer, and I began to work with my dad. My dad has a plant of precipitated silica, so I began to work with him when I was very young. And then, precipitated silica and rubber is the same thing, so I began to work in the lab at the beginning, and I went to Paris to study in the IFOCA rubber afterwards. And you begin to work with rubber, and then you fall in love. It's something that I have gone to different industry, because precipitated silica, you can use it in paints, in food, but rubber is you fall in love with rubber, and it is. I mean, the other industries are just side jobs. So I began to work with research and development. I began to work with green tires back in the 90s, late 90s. And then I went to marketing for several years. And when I was in marketing, I began to work with the SLTC, which is something that it was, since I began to be in the SLTC, for me was also part of my life, because you get involved with so many people, and you get to know so many places and people. And I began with the SLTC, and then I moved to Colombia, and then I moved to US, and I always keep working with rubber.
Interesting. So precipitated silica is actually the starting point of your journey with the rubber. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe Joko, could you share something about your journey?
Yes, John. Well, I start off in a different part of the industry as Maria. Maria started in the consuming industry, so I came from the producing end. So about 15 years ago, I moved to the countryside. I lived here at São Paulo, the capital of our state here, and I moved to the countryside, looking more for an opportunity to get off the big city, basically. And that opportunity came with a job at a production farm. I was supposed to work with the managing team, and as Maria said, once you start working with rubber, you fall in love. So that's basically what happened to me. I fell in love with rubber, and after some years working in the fields, managing production in the rubber plantations, I started working in assisting other producers. So I had some neighboring producers, and they wanted to know how they could manage their production a little bit better. So then I started with this consulting activity, basically by chance. It was something that happened, and by then I got invited to present my I had this managing, how can you put it, this managing method, and I was asked to present that at a big cooperative that it's called Evia Forte. It's one that I sent the video to you guys, and that's how I started working with assisting companies, basically. And when I got there, they all wanted to know about what was going on in the natural rubber market. So, and then the story gets interesting, because to answer that question to them, so they not only they wanted to have better management tools for their production, but they wanted to know a little bit more about the market. So that's when I met you, John. It's because I started looking for articles on natural rubber market, and then I came across one of your articles, and I wrote to you asking you your authorization to translate those articles to this group of clients. And then you said, okay, you not only give you the permission, but also I would like to invite you to come here so we can have some activities. And then I was just looking. It was in 2016 the first time that I went there by your invitation, and then I invited you to come here to Brazil. And on 2017, the May 30th, 2017, it was my first experience with Technobiz. It was the Emerging Trends in Natural Rubber Market seminar, and I was there at Bangkok. So
Bangkok, yeah.
I found this is a historical document, and I also found that I didn't return my evaluation of feedback, so I found it here. So sorry, Technobiz, my fault. But and since then, since 2016, when I started studying natural rubber market, then and going to Southeast Asia, basically, because I started to visit Southeast Asia 2-3 times a year, and that was a big thing for me, because it was when I was able to really start to understand about the global natural rubber industry. And everybody, when I was in Asia, everybody was asking me about Latin America. So what I did when I came back on 2016 is that I started traveling all through the natural rubber producing countries here in Latin America: Colombia, Guatemala, Mexico. And then I met so many other colleagues and learned so much more about Latin America, basically because on my following trips to Southeast Asia, I wanted to bring more information about not only Brazil, but Latin America. So you cut from, I don't know, 6 years ago to now, then all of the titles you mentioned, I became executive director of Apabor in 2017. And then after that, a lot of opportunities started to appear, such as being part of the IRDB directory board. It was also an invitation by Dr. Aziz that happened during our meeting in Guwahati that you invited me on that year. And also becoming member of representing Apabor at IRSG. I think in the past few years, those are the experience that most added knowledge to my professional experience. And just recently, on 2019, I had the privilege to be invited to become director of the Plantations Committee on SLTC. And since 2019, I've been collaborating with SLTC, and it has really helped me to get more in touch, not only with the issues and challenges here in Latin America, but with the agents, because SLTC, as Maria was saying, has a broad spectrum of associates here in the region. So I've been throughout this past 15 years having this love story with rubber, and for the past 6 years, basically with the natural rubber entities all over the world, having the privilege to learn about it. And I believe today is another opportunity for that.
Okay. Thank you, Jogo, for your narration of the journey. Mr. Pablo, would you like to briefly share your journey with the natural rubber? Briefly.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Well, now that my colleagues have been talking about falling in love, I would say that I felt in love 16 years ago. I was managing farms until I get to work with a company which was the largest producer here in Guatemala. And I get into this company because we were developing the first carbon project for America, and it was in rubber. So I came into this company, and I started working with rubber since then until now that I am in an independent consultant working for Plantech here in Guatemala. And actually, currently I am working with rubber management productions, and I am also still working with carbon credits and for a certification specifically with the FSC. So in 2010, we registered the second reforestation, afforestation project in the world. And of course, as I mentioned before, it was about rubber. And given that carbon credit project that it is still fixing and selling carbon credits, it was necessary to do some work with for a certification. Basically, that is my background, and I am still doing what I have been doing since the 16 years ago.
Okay, that's interesting, Pablo. So in fact, your your journey, your special area or domain of activity is quite interesting. Thank you for the three panelists for sharing your journey with the natural rubber. So now we are starting the discussion. We are going into the various issues and also the status of the ENA sector in the Latin American region. So coming the first discussion points. The major commercial source of natural rubber is the Amazonian rubber tree, also known as Para rubber tree, having the botanical name Hevea brasiliensis. It grew wild in Amazon forest. In 1976, Henry Wickham sailed out of Amazon with the 70,000 seeds of the Hevea brasiliensis tree. So those seeds ultimately led to the commercial introduction of rubber cultivation in the entire Asia and its further dynamic expansion. So although natural rubber originated from Brazil, currently Brazil accounts for only less than 2% of the global supply, less than 2%. The total production in the entire Latin America comes to less than 3% only. Could you please throw some light into the various factors, especially the plant diseases that inhibited the cultivation and production of natural rubber in Brazil and South America in the past? And also, could you please highlight how Brazil overcome those constraints? So I'm not pointing to any particular panelist, so maybe you can share your thoughts jointly.
Okay, if you guys allow me, I think we could start commenting a little bit about the Brazilian experience, and then we could go on to the other countries. I believe there is an interesting difference from the way that Brazil tackled the issue of the limitation of diseases and the other countries, especially Guatemala. And so I think that's something that we could later comment on, and obviously Maria and Pablo can help us. So about Brazil, basically what happened is, as you all know, throughout the history, there has been attempts since rubber cultivation, and I always like to put that way because we need to understand that rubber cultivation was an invention, right? It basically didn't exist in the beginning of the 20th century. It was an invention from the late 19th century, and up till then, obviously, all we had was the natural rubber produced from the forests in the Amazon. So after natural rubber cultivation was not only created but made possible and commercially viable, Brazil basically started trying to reproduce rubber cultivation in the same area where we had the wild rubber being produced. And what we discovered then is that there was this fungus, this disease, microcyclus, that was a limitation for cultivation, because and I had to explain that to a journalist the other day, and I gave an interesting example. I said, well, the South America leaf blight, as we call it in English, it's like it's pretty much like COVID. So if everybody is away from each other, staying at home in quarantine, then nobody will get infected. So, but if everybody go together to the, for instance, for a soccer game at the stadium, then everybody will get infected because they are near each other. that basically is the same thing with South America leaf blight. As the trees were separated in the forest, so you had South America leaf blight there, but they didn't get infected because they were far from each other. So putting in a very simple way, what happened is with cultivation, you put trees close to each other and then they get infected. So that was the best and most simple way that I discovered of explaining for someone that is not from the natural rubber industry or even the production part to understand why South American leaf blight was such a surprise when we started out trying to cultivate rubber here in Brazil. Well, for a long period, the best solution for that was developing clones that were resistant. So resistant clones were basically the best solution for that. And then Pablo can help us a little bit with that. He has a lot of knowledge with clone disease resistance, and he can help us a little bit with that topic. But what happened in Brazil is that basically didn't work too well. And what worked best here in Brazil was that in 1950, the IAC, that we call is the Campinas Agro Institute for Research, they started out trying to cultivate rubber in a different region. It was the region of the state of São Paulo. It's more to the south. And what they discovered is that this region was sort of escape region to South America leaf blight. Not because South America leaf blight was not present, because it is present here in the region, but because during the wintering season there is basically no rain. So if there's no rain, there's no humidity, and there's no condition for the pathogen to develop. And basically on wintry season is when the leaves are so young, and that's when the disease enters the tree. So basically what happens is after wintering, after the trees have matured their leaves, then you have humidity again, you have rain, but the disease can't affect the tree anymore. So they discovered that, and they discovered that bringing Asian clones here to the region, Asian clones with what in that time was considered to be a high productivity level, much higher than the resistant clones. That is, I think, the most important topic, because back then there was this big difficulty, because then Pablo can, I think, help us with this issue a little bit more. But 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the resistant clones, they had poor productivity yield. So basically that was something that on the regions here of Brazil that we had those clones, they were called the IAN clones, the Agronomic Institute of the North. Those clones had poor performance here in the region. And so when IAC brought the Asian clones to São Paulo and discovered that they were able to produce natural rubber, cultivated natural rubber here in the region, I think that's when we started constructing what today is the natural rubber industry here in Brazil. Most on the 80s and 90s, most of our expansion was done here in the region. Today, São Paulo corresponds to 67% of all natural rubber production, and more than half of the planted area. So São Paulo is the leading region for natural rubber production here. It is the leading region for natural rubber processing also. 80% of all processing plants are in the region of São Paulo, and not by chance, but São Paulo also is the main region for the consuming industry. Most of the consuming industries are also here in the state. So that was the story in Brazil. That is different from Guatemala, and then Pablo could speak a little bit about these specifics to us, because Guatemala didn't go for the solution of escape area, because basically there was none. But they went for the solution of resistant clones. And as you can see by the productivity yields in Guatemala, they have managed to build a great industry there. Today in Latin America, they are of the highest productivity yields in the region. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to learn from the experience in Guatemala. And I think today here we have Pablo, that knows it all and is living directly there, so he can tell us a little bit more about that. What do you say, Pablo?
Yeah, thank you, Diogo. And talking about a little bit here of Guatemala, the introduction of HEVEA is remembering back to the 1960s. As a matter of fact, we in Plantec are providing assistance, the technical assistance for the first farms with rubber here in Guatemala when the Goodyear introduced this species. Basically, it was introduced here in Guatemala because the United States didn't want to depend more on the Asia as the main supplier back in the Second World War of rubber. So given that, the United States decided to expand this rubber cultivation to other countries, and that's how it comes here to Guatemala, the rubber. Talking about the challenges, I think we will have more time in the meeting talk about the resistant clones. As Diogo mentioned, it is true we don't have escape zones, but what do we have here is special climate conditions. Rubber trees is very suitable in Guatemala. We have three main regions of production: south, the northeast, and the north part of Guatemala. And basically, the main challenge here in Guatemala is perhaps the managing of disease, leaf disease, basically microcycles. But it's a challenge that we have solved with using resistant clones. And nowadays, it's more used and more paying attention about what clone, the clone selection, what to establish at the farms. So here in Guatemala, we do have almost all the clones, I may say, coming from Asia, Africa, and of course from America. We can cultivate all of them, but I think during the last time, the last years, we have been more selective about what clones to use. And basically, it's something that I would like to say right now, and I will let Maria, perhaps she has something to say about this.
Yeah, Maria, if you allow me, sorry for interrupt you, but just a brief comment, because I think it's important, and I know that Maria can help me with that. It's important to say, because today we are here. Okay, I'm in Brazil, Pablo's in Guatemala, Maria representing the SLTC in the whole Latin America. Of course, we have colleagues in Colombia, like Fernando Garcia. We have colleagues in Mexico, like Elias Ortiz, that could be here today. and could help us to shed some light on the specific region of Mexico and Colombia. But as I sent all these names to John, John said, okay, we can have like too many people. we need to choose only 2 or 3. So I just would like to say that in our committee in SLTC, we have representatives from all these producing countries, and is maybe we can have another opportunity where we can invite them to be here and to share their experience. But I believe in the case of Mexico, it's a similar experience to Guatemala, because it's a similar region, well, obviously with some particularities. And in the case of Colombia, I would say that they have both, like Brazil. They have areas that are endemic, and they have areas to South America leaf blight, and they have areas where there's these escape zones. Mainly the region of Meta, which is the main area of plantation and production today. It is considered an area of escape zone. So just to give a broad scope, but then Maria can help me to not look bad with our colleagues in Colombia and Mexico and say that I know that if they were here, they would give so many more details and information, but we're going to try our best here to represent them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm not an expert on diseases or that, but yeah, Fernando from Colombia, I have so many talks to him, and he participates a lot on the plantations committee. And I know that Diogo also, have all this information from the committee. In Colombia, it's a different case. It has different regions where there are plantations. Some of them, I remember years ago, they had problems with the clones, as Diogo said. They brought some clones, and the clones didn't work the same in every region they were planted. So I think natural rubber is endemic to Colombia too, because Colombia and Venezuela. I remember my first professor and rubber was in Venezuela, and he was a pioneer of planting rubber in Venezuela. I mean, probably 40 years ago. And because Colombia and Venezuela, they have a part of the Amazon is also in those countries. So the natural rubber tree is endemic from these countries. Also a little bit in Ecuador. We have a little plantation in Ecuador. But of course, after all these problems happened years ago, as it happened in Brazil, a lot of individuals and governments, group of people try to introduce the tree again. And in the case of Colombia, and in the case of, remember, Venezuela, but in the case of Colombia, they try a lot of things. Not all things work at the beginning, but it's been a journey of trying and improving, and there are different zones where they have other diseases, not only the leaf disease. So they have to fight with some things. But I think that in terms of what is happening in Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, even in Ecuador, is that there are a lot of people that are working hard on improving the conditions of the people that plant the trees, and of course the kind of trees, because not all clones are created equal, and they don't work the same in all regions. Some clones that can work well in Brazil they cannot work the same probably in Santander, in Colombia, because Colombia is also a big country with different climates and different zones that you can plant rubber trees, but they are not going to give the same. And in the case of Colombia, the plantations are even younger than in Brazil or in Guatemala. So they are, walking on the backs of what Brazil did well, or Guatemala, did well. So I think it will be pretty well in the future. It's doing very well now. New plantations are coming. And we are going to talk about that later. But I think that as Diogo say, or Pablo, you know, is something that nothing works well in everywhere.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the explanation. In fact, actually, basically, it is the countries in Latin America overcome the issue by clone improvements and identification of suitable agroclimatic regions, right? If I summarize. So, Mr. Jogo, you mentioned about one organization called IAC. If I correctly understand, Brazil has no specific rubber research institute, but IAC is an institute which is representing different agricultural crops, including rubber, right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, I believe there's an interesting character that we should mention here is Dr. Paulo Gonçalves from IAC. Dr. Paulo Gonçalves is a worldwide known researcher in rubber. He received the IRDB Sakhar medal in 2018, and basically I think this character was very important because throughout this whole journey of finding suitable areas here in Brazil, he was a great leader. So as a researcher, I believe he made this path for other researchers that came after him in IAC. I believe IAC together with Embrapa, we also should mention that because we have IAC here in São Paulo, and IAC is acting and with activities throughout the country, but also in collaboration with Embrapa. And I mentioned that because Dr. Paulo Gonçalves originally was from Embrapa. Basically, he was landed from Embrapa to AIC. So although we don't have a specific rubber research institute today in Brazil, we have both in Embrapa and IAC a group of very competent researchers that I think to this date are continuing this marvelous work that was started by Dr. Paulo Gonçalves and so many other colleagues with him.
Okay, yeah, so interesting. So in fact, actually, usually this program is of 1 hour duration. So today we taking a little bit more time. So maybe for further questions, we may have to try to summarize or brief the answers, the discussion, because we are supposed to finish, but we can continue, no problem. So we will continue the discussion. So next point, discussion point, if I am correct, rubber is commercially cultivated and produced in Brazil, Guatemala, Mexico, and Colombia, among the Latin American countries. In terms of agroclimatic conditions, yield per tree, and proneness to plant diseases, could you please share your thoughts on the suitability of the 4 countries for commercial cultivation of rubber? So what are the major constraints or challenges, and what are the major strengths and opportunities of the 4 countries in terms of agroclimatic suitability and proneness to plant diseases?
Okay, Pablo, you want to take us from that point?
Okay, so I'm going to start now. I would not like to see us so proud of my country, but I am. We have here in Guatemala excellent conditions for the rubber growth, especially because, for example, the soil conditions here in Guatemala are one of the best in the world, basically because it's coming from volcanic activity. We have physical and chemistry talking about the soil conditions as one of the best in the world. And we also have some advantages as the raining time here in Guatemala, because it's not only the weather conditions, but it also affects. What I'm saying is that normally in the south coast of Guatemala, which is where is the majority of the plantations, the rain comes after in the afternoon. So that let us start working and very early and collect and having the rain in the afternoon. So that give us a big advantage. What Diogo talked about the seasoning time here in Guatemala, it's very short, and we as producer let the tree rest or let them refoliation happen without tapping about 3 or 4 weeks per year, and that is the only time that we may say lose of tapping, but it is voluntary. It is not because on the weather condition, but we know that we are giving better conditions for the rubber refoliation trees, and that's why, and that is the reason why we are doing that stop. Another thing is the tapping skills here in Guatemala are good enough, better than in some other countries, because we have had for more than 50 years of that activities in the country. So that let us having some culture of tappers, and that is good from my perspective. I have been in Brazil, in Colombia, and in Asia, and I can say that Guatemala has good tapper skills conditions. About talking about commercialization, which is also important here. I would say that the diversification of Guatemala it's one example for the world, because we have done so many things trying to reach different markets. For example, the FSC certification for rubber was here in Guatemala, the first in the world, because Sri Lanka, it has a little bit one plantation, but here in Guatemala, now we are doing that since 12, 13 years ago, talking about carbon credits and the latex quality. It's good here in Guatemala also. Well, about talking about the challenge, I would say that talking about agroclimatic conditions, I would say that recently we have had some rains in some months that it is not expected to have. That would let us be more susceptible to live disease in the future, because normally we don't have a lot of rain in April, and in the last years we have had some more rain that is normally. Basically, it's because it's the refoliation time here in Guatemala in February and March, and we also have had some rain on those months. That is not usual, but is more common in the recent years. So I would say that this climate change that is it's occurring right now. It's not going. It is not something that is going to happen in the future. It's happening right now. So that would let us be more susceptible, and I would like to talk perhaps later about not only plant disease but plant pest. We have had some problems here in Guatemala that weren't reported in the past years, but now we do have. So that is something that I would say right now.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know
Thank you.
if maybe, while we discuss a little bit more about this point, maybe we could take a look at some of the pictures that Plantech sent us. Diseases and past in all of the Latin America region.
Okay, please show the pictures. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so I think we can continue commenting on this point as the pictures go by, and then maybe comment on some of the pictures, trying, obviously, as John said, let's try to constrain a little bit to not take too much time. So as Pablo was saying, and we mentioned earlier, there is this issue of plant diseases throughout the whole region, and I believe mostly in escape zones in Brazil and escape zones in Colombia, and I think that we have these other alternatives to tackle this situation of endemic diseases. But I think it is very interesting to observe how this profile made the natural reproducers in the region to have to go after technology, to have to go after the learning of techniques, because basically to make it viable. So as Pablo was saying, in Guatemala, not only the whole work in research of clone resistancy, but also in tapping techniques and tapping skills. I think all of that is something that you will find here in the region to be most different from other countries in the more in a general area of Southeast Asia. So I think this is one thing that we can point out. Throughout the pictures here, we've been seeing some of the characteristics of both first Brazil and now some pictures of Colombia and now Guatemala. So to have a broad idea on how these areas are equipped and how they are managed, I think those pictures give us a nice idea of that.
So we have more pictures coming in. Okay. So that's quite interesting to get the suitability of the countries for growing rubber, challenges ahead. And also Mr. Pablo has mentioned about the climate change. In fact, we'll having a separate discussion on that climate change. So maybe we will continue the discussion. So NR production in the Southeast Asian countries is increasingly challenged by adverse effects of climate change. Recurrent typhoons, unseasonal torrential rains, flash floods have been increasingly reported in key regions in Southeast Asia. A rising temperature and declining yield per tree have been reported in the traditional rubber growing regions across major NR producing countries in Asia. So my question is the NR sector in any Latin American countries challenged by climate change? In fact, Pablo has already mentioned that there are issues. So could you share more information on this? For example, the changes newly observed in the climate, how they are impacting on the optimum growth of rubber plants, how they are impacting the yield per tree and harvesting frequency. So what is the status of the 4 Latin American countries in the development and the commercial introduction of climate tolerant clones? What is the status in the development of such clones? Within each country, are new geographical regions becoming suitable for growing rubber due to climate change, while traditional regions are becoming less suitable? My question is whether new geographical regions are becoming suitable because of the climate change. So if you have some map or some pictures, it will be helpful to get a better idea about the issue.
Okay, in regard to Brazil, just lately, last year, we had some interesting occurrences here that I think made the whole sector pause a little bit and ask ourselves what is going on, because basically, as you said, climate change is, I think, is something that is bringing challenges all over the world, and it hasn't been different here in Brazil. I know that in Guatemala last year there was some case of excessive rain. I think Pablo can tell us a little bit about that. But in regard to Brazil, there are 2 videos that I think we could take a look at. And the first, I believe, is about the fire season. And then one might ask, why are we talking about fire as something related to climate change? It's because last year in Brazil we had the worst drought in the 30 years, 40 years, something like that. So and especially in São Paulo, which is our main natural rubber producing region, it was a problem, because after that drought, what happened is that we started having a lot of problems with fires, and it was like a record thing. And in some cases, those fires came to the point of killing the trees, adult trees, and that was not something so common, because, as you know, on a rubber forest, what happened is you don't have so much impact of fire, because it's not, as you see from the picture, it's not a fire that goes too high. But what happened is it was so dry, and there was a deficit of humidity so intense that the fires were unbelievably strong, and there was a lot of cases where the trees died. In some other cases, the fire delayed the beginning of tapping of last season, that in Brazil happens in October. And not only that, what happened right after that period is that we had problems with frosting that we never had before. So talking about this part was the main producing region in Brazil, the north of São Paulo. We had areas with -5 degrees Celsius, and that had never happened before. And what happened is that so many trees, adult trees, they just got frozen and they died, whole areas. So that was a big impact. We don't have official numbers, but we believe something about 10–15% of the area had problems. And what I mean with problems is, in sometimes the trees died, in other cases it delayed the initiation of production on the season. So basically those impacts they are being felt right now. Processing plants, consuming industries, they are perceiving this lack of production in the region that is coming from these impacts that we might consider to be impacts of climate change. But in Guatemala, there was also a problem, but to the inverse, right? Is that correct, Pablo? You had a very intense rain season?
Yes, especially in August. Yes, we have 1,300 millimeters in 1 month. And it was a lot of rain for us. It's a lot, of course, for you, John. Perhaps it wouldn't be too much, but for us here in Guatemala, having in just 30 days a rainfall of 1,300 millimeters, it's high, and that led us to not tap all days. In some cases, we have had between 10 and 12 days, consecutive days, without being able to tap the trees because of the humidity of the panel tapping. So that was something that it wasn't normal, particular for that month, August.
It happened. Sorry, it happened also like in Colombia last year. It rained when it didn't have to rain, and it didn't rain when it had to rain. So it was also something that it was like first time. We were raining when still in November we're raining, and it had to be like summertime.
Diego would like to show the video of the.
Yes, we saw the video of.
No, I had to run the video. Let me run the video, please. I have not run the video. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. In this image here, we see a group that was trained basically to prevent the fire from spreading. So this is basically a group trained in the farm. So when the fire comes, they are able to prevent it from spreading, and that is something that has saved a lot of trees from getting burned. So this is one of the things that we've been discussing in our technical committees here in the association, is that we need to equip now our producers with skills of managing fires. So this is something that we never thought about doing it, because it was basically not a problem. But since it's becoming so more intense, and I believe for the next years, climate change might continue to make more intense the incidence of fires. This is the type of thing that we're gonna start to have to worry about, equipping our teams with skills so they can prevent the fire from spreading. So here in this image, you can see this is one area that got burned.
So this fire happens out of the sun, the temperature from the sun, or due to some human misuse of some somebody throwing some cigarette butt, something like that?
Yeah, it might happen. For instance, a spontaneous combustion might happen, or even if you, a tractor, for instance, is working on a certain field, and there a sparkle comes out of the engine or something like that. The weather is so dry, and and then there's another thing that we were talking about is the vegetation is also dry, because this is interesting. What happened last year is that not only there was this intense drought, but also with the frosting of the vegetation afterwards, the frosting, it was all even drier. So that made, I think, the fires, that gave the fires a boost, because they had so much dry vegetation to consume and spread, and basically there was no humidity to contain the fire. So basically, I think it was a combination of two evils that made the situation so much worse.
Let me show you the frost issue as well.
Yeah. The frosting is something that we had never seen before. It was a big surprise here to us. And even we had problems with younger trees, as shown in the picture. But here you see, this is a cup with frozen water in it. So we never seen something like that before. And then we saw adult trees dying of this freezing frosting. In this image here, was made by a drone. You can see the area that was affected. It's clear in the image. Is area closer to this small forest here. So it's the area with a lower altitude. So, and then it's a big area. It's not just two or three trees. It's a huge area. And then you can see by these images how it evolved after the frosting. So the trees started getting back. Some trees started to react, but as I said, in the cases that the trees didn't die, what happened in the trees that died was actually a small percentage. But what happened to the other bigger percentage is that production got delayed, because the canopy was not correctly suitable for production when it should be. That's basically what was the main impact.
So thank you for the detailed information you shared. Along with the pictures, we get the feel of having visited the place, in fact. So we feel that actually, in fact, I feel that Latin America is one region where the impact of climate change is more visible. Actually, a little bit more serious compared to Southeast Asian countries, the impact of climate change. So a little bit more serious, yeah. And one more point. So maybe one more point in the context of the climate change impact. So I heard that every plantation in Brazil must retain a certain portion of its land as a small private forest as per regulation. So our audience is interested to know more about this. This is because such a regulation or practice is quite uncommon in Asian rubber producing countries. So is this regulation applicable to in Guatemala, Mexico, and Colombia as well? So what are the various other similar policy measures to discourage deforestation and encourage the green credentials of encourage the green planets? Please share what are the regulations as well as various policy measures.
Yeah, this is very interesting when comparing Guatemala, Colombia, and Brazil. because I'm just going to briefly comment on Brazil, and then Maria and Pablo can help us with Colombia and Guatemala. As you said, in Brazil we have this law that obligates every farm to have, for instance, in the region here where we mainly produce rubber, we need to have 25% of the 20% of the area needs to be in natural forest. And if you don't have that, then you have to plant that natural forest. So I think that is a legislation that, as you said, is legislation that goes in the direction of not only preventing deforestation, but even helping to plant more farms, reforestation. So this is something interesting that we have in the case of Brazil, and also that it is permitted for you to intercrop natural forest with rubber here in these areas. So you have a 20% area and you don't have that you need to reforestate, and then how are you going to do that? So you can do that intercropping the lines of forest with rubber, and in that way those 20% can not only generate environmental sustainability, but also economic and social sustainability, because it's going to promote income for the local communities and obviously generate such an important and critical raw material for the national economy. So I think that is something that in Brazil I would highlight as an interesting topic regarding environment. And in the case of Colombia and Guatemala, then Maria and Paulo can help us about legislation. But one thing that I would like to hear from them, and that I think it's very advanced in the case of Guatemala, but also lately in Colombia, is what they are doing with forest certification. Pablo can tell us about his work on that part. Maria is also monitoring and together with Fernando Garcia there in the region of Colombia and the Confederación de Caucho. I believe that they are doing something very interesting there, and that we all should learn from them and try to replicate. In the case of Brazil, we still don't have projects of that sort here, but I do believe their experiences are being very interesting in that way.
I'm going to talk a little bit about Colombia, because the situation, I mean, how rubber began in Colombia was a little bit different. So in Colombia, there is still a lot of illegal plantations. So most of the rubber plantations, not all, but most of the rubber plantations were substitutes or those illegal plantations. So that was something that the government began to do, I mean, decades ago, to substitute and to change illegal plantations for rubber. So that's something that you say a lot. So a lot of the rubber trees are not, planted in, from a forest. You didn't do any deforestation to have a rubber plantation. So that's something that is very different when you talk about how Colombia began its rubber plantations. And of course, because of that, not only illegal plantations, but also where illegal groups were established, the government tried to go there with rubber trees. So that's a little bit different when you talk about other countries like Mexico or Brazil or Colombia, or Guatemala. But also there is like a lot of work on the forest certification that has been done. And to keep the forest in a good shape. That's something that Colombia is also working with carbon footprint and forest certifications. We are going to certify some plantations very soon with the FSCC. So I'm not going to stand too much about that because I want to hear from Pablo too.
Okay, so about the legislation, the legally requirement here in Guatemala, and of course it is not allowed in a regular basis to overthrow, to deforestate the natural forest that already exist in the farms. Of course, there's some legislation which is in respect of the river banks that they should be left. And I would say that the legislation here in Guatemala, even though it is not stronger, but it doesn't, as I mentioned, let you take off the natural forest coverage that is already existing in a farm. So about that legally, about the voluntary decision that the owner made, being participating on a certification scheme. Yes, here in Guatemala, FSC has been using since 12, 13 years ago. We established, as I mentioned, the first FSC certification in a group scheme, and since then a lot of work has been done for, especially by the processing plants that are required raw material certified to be processed, specifically talking about latex. Unfortunately, coplams are not yet commercially here in Guatemala as FSC certified product, because I am saying unfortunately, because as we know, the tire industry is the most demand of rubber in the world, and even though it has been a success project done in Asia with Coplam certified FSC to produce tire. Here in Guatemala, we are we are focused on produce latex certified, because here in Guatemala, the production of latex is very, very important. I would say like 40% of the total production in Guatemala is latex. Yes, and it's not so common in other countries. And that's why the latex certified has been sold from Guatemala since 14, 15 years ago, as I mentioned. So yes, FSC requires that at least 10% of the total area of the farm should be left or kept as natural forest or as original conditions. And if you don't have it, it encourages you to promote and to recover that area. 10% sounds small, but in practical terms, it's big, because sometimes the net area of rubber cultivation in a farm reaches the 95–98% of the gross area. So coming from 98–95% to 90 sounds easy, but it is not. And perhaps there is some challenge in the farms. Fortunately for us, the farms already certified in Guatemala, of course, comply with this requirement. And I would say that related to natural forest is the thing that I would like to say by now.
Information. In fact, we have the detailed information on this, and interesting to know the status of regulation and practices in different countries. Good information, especially in the context of the impact of climate change we have discussed. In fact, actually, we are little will take a longer time because right now it is almost going to be midnight in Southeast Asia, but we will continue because the discussions are quite interesting. So now my next question, my discussion point. Rubber production is increasingly challenged by the outbreak of new plant diseases. I'm talking in the context of the Southeast Asian countries. A new fungal leaf disease has affected a total extent of nearly 0.7 million hectares of mature rubber trees in Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. In fact, mainly in Indonesia and Thailand, and to a limited extent in Malaysia and Sri Lanka. According to field level observations made by plant pathologists attached to the rubber research institutes of the respective countries, the yield from the affected trees came down by 20 to 30%, depending on the severity of the disease incidence. So what is the status of NR production sector in Latin American countries in terms of plant diseases? So is there any new disease reported in the recent years? If so, what is the extent of its spread and the impact on the yield per tree? I'm talking about any new disease similar to what we have seen in Southeast Asian countries.
Basically, here in Brazil, since our production is totally focused on these escape zones, today, not only São Paulo, the main production area, but also the second largest, which is Goiás, and other regions that are expanding, like Minas Gerais and Mato Grosso do Sul. Those are all regions within this escape zone. So in these areas, we don't have any challenging diseases, and not in the way of to be considered as limitations. And there has been no news of new disease to the extent of becoming an impediment or to impact production, such as you have described in Southeast Asia. I don't know in the other countries. I think Pablo and Maria can help us a little bit with that.
Yes, for Guatemala, I would say that no new one, as talking about a plant disease, fortunately for us, but as difference of other countries, especially with Brazil, we haven't had pest problems here in Guatemala until 5 to 8 years, no, I would say 10 years ago, which I would say was the first pest disease commercially important here in Guatemala. I'm talking about this moth Erinis elo, which is a lepidopteran insect that has effect for rubber plantation here in Guatemala. This pest didn't affect in the past year until recently, and I would say then that for plant disease, I would say none new ones, but yes, for pest disease in Brazil, country that I have been a lot of times over there, I would say that even given that the rubber tree is native for that country, of course, they have a lot of more pest disease reported for them and a plant, of course. They have more insects commercially with the commercial importance, and they have to do some spray controls over them, which is not common here in Guatemala. Not common. I am not saying that it's not happening. Yes, of course, it's happening by helicopters, by a lot of other spray systems, but it is not common here in Guatemala. But in Brazil, is sometimes is a must. And if you went to some farms, or the farmers have their spraying systems, especially to disease and pest control. That is something relevant. For example, yes, I saw a picture of the moth that I was talking about. That moth, that picture was from Guatemala. This picture is also from Guatemala. It's microcycles. And as I mentioned, then Brazil is it's more common for them to do these controls.
Yeah, and as I said, if you go to, there are some traditional areas like Bahia, like Espírito Santo, and then I have to be fair, they are having a lot of problem with something new there that is called crosta negra. I was searching here for the scientific name, but I couldn't find it. So crosta negra is something that is being somewhat a new disease there in these regions. But as I said, those regions are not actually the main production regions here, and I'm not diminishing their importance. I'm just saying that I don't know, 70% of our production basically is in escape zone that doesn't require any type of pest management or disease management. So that's not saying that the other 30% are not important. Of course they are, but it's not like a main thing.
Yeah. Okay. That is a good information about the incidence of new diseases. Thank you for the information shared. Thank you. So now we'll talk a little about the socioeconomic profile. So if my understanding is right, NR production in Latin American countries is dominated by large plantations. This is something different from the situation in Southeast Asian countries. So my question is, are these large plantations private owned or government owned? So could you please share information about the ownership structure of the rubber plantations in the 4 countries? For example, approximately what percentage is owned by the private companies, and what percentage owned by individuals, and also what percentage owned by government? And also, if you have some information available on the size structure of the rubber plantations, for example, what percentage of the total area belongs to the size class more than 1,000 hectare or between 500 to 1,000 hectare? So a little bit information about the information about the structure of the plantation industry, rubber plantation sector, in our production sector in the 4 countries, if you have any information. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe in Brazil, there's a bit of the majority here in São Paulo is owned by individuals, and although you have not a big average, the average here in São Paulo I think is 40 hectares. Sometimes those areas, and most of the times those areas are as just a small fraction of the whole farm. So sometimes you see, oh, it's only 40 hectares, okay, but the farm is 400, something like that. This too, in regard of São Paulo, is the main production region. But you have other regions like Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás. They are characterized by bigger farms and bigger plantations. About 400 hectares is I think would be the average in Goiás, which is the 2nd largest producer here. And then other regions, as I said, in Espírito Santo, in Bahia, other parts of Brazil. Then you have what you would call something more similar to Southeast Asia. I would say small portions of land, like 5 hectares, 3 hectares. But these small percentages, like I would say 10%, 15% tops of the natural production here. There are companies, especially in Goiás. There's a company in Goiás that stands for half of the natural rubber plantation of the state. So it's a company owned, and no state owned plantations. I don't know any state owned plantations in Brazil or in any other country in Latin America. Then Maria and Pablo can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this is not common here for the state to own plantations.
Yeah, yes, you're right. I as soon as I recall, I don't remember any staying on plantations in Latin America. That's something, you know, related to individuals or companies. In the case of Colombia, 95% of the plantations are owned by small holders, but there are big plantations. So 45% of the total area belongs to big plantations. So it's like a structure that is a mix of a structure. There are, you know, plantations that are as Diogo say, as small as 5 hectares or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, and I would say I would add from what Maria said that basically in Colombia is because the number of producers it's a few number. It's not a lot of number of producers. Different here in Guatemala, even though we are a small country, and all the land is private owned, and no state or government owned any land with rubber production. And I would say the smallholders here in Guatemala is not it's not common. Not common as in the Asia basis or as in the Asia case. Here in Guatemala, the producers are bigger, and I would say that I remember the average of the land size here in Guatemala. It was 50 hectares. So that is something that I would like to add by now.
Okay, thank you for that information. So right now we will see right now we discussed about the structure of the plantations, ownership structure and everything. So maybe from the plantations we will go into the farmers. So could you please enlighten the audience about the profile of rubber farmers in the 4 countries? For example, are the farmers fully dependent on rubber, or do they have other crops or non-farm income sources? So do you have anything to share with about the socioeconomic profile of the farmers? For example, so in fact, actually, I had observed that the rubber farmers in Latin American countries are generally rich and they have multiple crops. Farmers are well educated and they manage their farming operations just like a corporate business. So they own expensive car, horse, have membership in clubs, and enjoy social life. This is my understanding. Maybe I am wrong. So could you please share more insights into the socioeconomic profile of farmers in the 4 countries? Are they also, I would like to know whether the new generations are interested in rubber cultivation. Just if you have any information, please share. Thank you.
Yeah, in the case of Brazil, I think I was the blame for you to have this impression because every time you've been here, I took you to San Jose, which is our main production area. And yes, there I think we would find the majority of producers to be of a higher social condition because basically land is very expensive, number one. There are not any public policies in terms of effective public policies in terms of helping to the access of land and to invest, because not only land is very expensive, so who has land? Only people that have a lot of money, basically. But it's also very expensive to plant natural rubber, and you have basically no help from the government. You have very little finance from banks. So not only you need to have land, but you need to have this money at your disposal to spend for 7 and 10 years and wait for another 5 years to get your returns on your investment. So basically, if you ask me, who is able to plant rubber in the area of São Paulo, in the majority of cases are people that already have a lot of money and other activities, so they don't depend on rubber. So this is one characteristics that we have here in the region. I believe that this is very interesting in the case of Colombia, because in Colombia, then Maria can tell us a little bit more about that. There was a very structured policy to help the community, the local communities in certain regions, as Maria said, to plant rubber. So there, I think we're going to find different profiles than what we have here, mostly in Northwest São Paulo. And then again, I have to say, in other regions, such as Bahia, Espírito Santo, you will find Mato Grosso, you will find different profiles, but those regions account for a smaller percentage of the production.
Yeah, Diogo, as you say, in Colombia, it's a different story. I'm not saying there are not big plantations owned by big corporations that happen also in Colombia, but there was a real government structure for helping people that were in the illegal business to bring them to the legal business, you know, giving them plantations, land and trees. And also there was, and there is a big support from the government and other institutions, even US institutions that are like USAID, that are helping these small farmers and these people that came not only from, illegal crops, but also from illegal activities like guerrillas and the stuff. So people that came from that part and they were incorporated onto the legal part, the legal system. There is a big support from the government and from other institutions for them to participate in the rubber business. So that makes a little bit difference between, you know, Colombia and other countries.
Yeah, in the case of Guatemala, I would say that almost, well, not almost, but I do agree what Diogo mentioned, and about the financial possibility of the rubber producers, given that it's always on a private effort. So I would say it's in some cases, yes, the farmers or the producers are well educated, of course, and here in Guatemala we do see the rubber production cultivation as a business, and as a business it requires some capital, and of course it's not often available for the small farmers or the small producers, given these circumstances. And yeah, that is that I would like to add by now.
So thank you very much. That answers well. Thank you for the information. So now maybe we'll go through the remaining discussion a little bit faster, because it is already midnight in the Southeast Asia. So Next discussion point is on the extent of mechanization. The cultivation and various other farm operations in the Latin American countries are largely mechanized. Large farm size and the plain lands are the advantages for adopting mechanization. Perhaps most of the farmers must be having their own farm mechanization systems. So this is in sharp contrast with the largely labor-dependent rubber production system still being practiced in the major producing countries in the Southeast Asia. So Brazil and other Latin American countries, it is something different in sharp contrast with the Southeast Asian countries. So could you please share the status of the 4 countries in terms of farm mechanization? Farm mechanization, I mean only in the case of rubber. So which are the various farm operations which are largely mechanized, and which are the operations such as tapping which are still being labor dependent? So what is the status of mechanized tapping?
Yeah, in the case of mechanized tapping in Brazil, I think we have had some contacts with companies in China if there were any possibility of having, because as you said, we have a profile that would be, glance would be very suitable for mechanization. The thing is, until now, although it seems like technically wise it is becoming it's still too expensive. Get for instance 10 hectares, our Chinese company was kind of 5 times more expensive than the tapper, and that I'm talking the whole 35 years of production of a tree. So economically wise, we believe it is still not viable, and we're talking about a tapper that is costly. Okay, you have here in Brazil tappers costing $600 per month, something that is quite higher than the cost of tapping in Southeast Asia. But still, the cost of mechanization is 5 times this. And so we haven't been able to find a way to make it viable economically wise. But I believe that is something that with time will get sorted out. And I believe in, I don't know, some years from now, 10 years from now, maybe we're going to have even a small portion or percentage of our areas mechanized. I think that is something that we can look for in regard to tapping. Then other activities such as extracting rubber, the use of spraying, so the use of, for instance, tractors and this sort of machinery is very common here in Brazil. And I know that in some places in Southeast Asia, this is sometimes a big challenge. But here is very common. Every farm has, for instance, a tractor. This is something that I could say with a certain amount of confidence. So other activities, there are a small portion of mechanization, but automation of tapping is something that is still far from our reality.
This is a system.
I would say the same.
Okay, please.
No, I will say the same. I don't have. I mean, it's too expensive for now.
So I realized, I presume that this is a status of almost all the for producing countries in Latin America. Can I presume like that? Almost. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, no. In fact, actually, Jogo has referred this point. There is not lack of government assistance or government support policies. Is something different from the Asian countries. So we'll discuss one point on this. So expansion of rubber cultivation and development of inner sector is in major producing countries in Asia are largely supported by strong support by the respective governments in the form of favorable policies and incentives. So moreover that, government provided R&D support, extension services and training. And a few countries, for example, Thailand, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, India, they provide financial assistance in the form of subsidy to farmers for planting and to encourage them to adopt various good agricultural practices. And also during the low phase of rubber prices, farmers in most of the Asian producing countries are being supported by the respective governments by implementing different forms of income supporting programs. So are the cultivation of rubber and various development activities in the four South Latin American countries strongly supported by the respective governments? So Jogo has already referred this points. So maybe you can mention what kind of support measures are rendered by the governments. There might not be any kind of subsidy, but what are the other kind of measures? For example, R&D support, development of new clones, extension services, and what are the various support rendered by the government for the development of rubber plantations in the four countries? Thank you.
Yeah, basically in Brazil, we have very little participation and increasingly smaller. So every year, I think the participation of the government in supporting natural rubber becomes smaller here in the region, and it becomes increasingly something of a private initiative. And we've discussed that also to the case that you have processing plants providing support, technical support for the producers in a way of differentiating themselves, because we have so big competition to buy raw material here. So there is even this phenomenon. But I think in Colombia, it's very different. Colombia, I would say there's a lot to learn from public policies in Colombia directed to rubber, because I think they have really made a big effort to support farmers through the association, to the Confederación, and I think that is an interesting case in Latin America for natural rubber public policies.
Yeah, I mean it's also kind of not only government, it's institutional. So there are several institutions that are supporting the rubber business in Colombia. And one thing that is very interesting is that there is a program now that links the plantations with the producers and even with the rubber producer, the rubber manufacturing. So there is a way to link all the chain of rubber, and it's something that I think is more linked to the institution that one specific government, which is very interesting because, you know, of course, government has helped with some, you know, taxes, facilities. I mean, but in the case of Colombia, I think it's something more institutional than government. So that's better because it allows you to be during a long time.
But here in Guatemala, I would say that there is a government program available for producers, which is it's based on a forest incentive payment, basically that covers the expenditure, the cost of the first year of the establishment. This program is available for the north and northeast part of Guatemala, and is in order to promote the establishment of rubber plantation in this area, in this region. For the south coast, which is the with the classic rubber producer region, it is not available this government program, and that is the only thing that that we have coming from government.
Okay. Thank you for the information. In fact, that is quite interesting, especially the points mentioned by Maria on the role of institutions rather than the government. It's quite interesting. So in fact, actually, maybe in the remaining questions, we will try to finish faster. So maybe we will little bit go fast deeper into the industry. So could you please share information about the supply chain of an industry in the 4 countries? So maybe we can discuss about which are the different forms of in which farmers sell the produce. Are they produced in the form of capillum or fresh latex? In fact, actually in Guatemala, around 60% is sold in the form of latex, which Pablo earlier mentioned. So which are the different forms in which farmers are selling the produce? Number 1. Then are there intermediaries involved when farmers sell the produce? For example, when the farmers sell the capillum or fresh latex to a processing company, are there intermediaries? And what is a system followed by the processing factories to source raw rubber? For how they are sourcing capillum and fresh latex? Where does the processed rubber, maybe TSR or centrifugal latex, go from the processing factories? Where does it go? If you explain, if you have some kind of a flow chart, it would be easier to understand if it is available, or maybe you can explain without a flow chart. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be very brief in the case of Brazil. Basically, here we have processing plants all directed to one market alone, which is TSR, and there is a bigger consumption than production in the region, and so that help us to understand a little bit about the characteristics of the market here. So there's at least 50% of all consumption can't be sourced locally. So understanding that local consumption is something strategical, you understand why there is a big competition for that local raw material. And so, as I was saying, processing plants here, they need to develop all sorts of strategies to compete among each other to obtain that raw material. And I believe it's no different in Guatemala, because although there is basically no consumption of natural rubber, or small consumption of natural rubber in Guatemala, they have a strong position as an exporter. So there is a big competition for natural rubber in Guatemala as well, because of the whole region deficit of production. So I think this is something that it's very very characteristical of our region.
And I would like to add what Diogo mentioned, that here in Guatemala, no intermediaries involved. The producer sells directly to the processing plants, and the payment is based on the dry rubber content of the raw material, if you're talking about couplums or latex. And about here in Guatemala, we are not industrialized. We don't have too much industrialization of the rubber, not too much. Just not to say almost nothing about rubber industrialization. We can produce raw material primarily processed, but not in an ending product. Given that we export more than 90% of the productions to Latin American countries, and in something that is very important, to the major market in the world, which is United States. And we are so near by Mexico, which is the tire producer, the main tire producer for US. We are about 10, 12 hours ahead from them. And we are geographically very, very near from the major market that give us a big opportunity to us.
Okay, so thank you for the information. Maria, would you like to add any points to that?
I mean, I think that we have talked about that. We have in Colombia, we have some TSR plants that Colombia produces. TSR and the latex that Colombia produces is consumed all in Colombia. But Colombia also has, you know, rubber consumers. So, but Colombia also is exporting part of the TSR that they are producing now.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So that's interesting. In fact, actually, supply chain is shorter in Latin American countries compared to Southeast Asia. I would like to say that it is more efficient because of the absence of intermediaries, something very interesting. As a supplement to that same points, any idea about the number of processing factories? For example, how many TSR processing factories and how many scientific address processing factories are there in the 4 countries? Some rough idea. And how much is the processing capacity? I mean, annual processing capacity of a TSR factory or the lattice processing factory? Just any, if you have any approximate idea.
In Colombia, there are 3 TSR processing factories. I don't remember how many latex centrifuges are in Colombia, but some of them, at least I think 3 or 5. I don't have that number. Maybe more than that. But in TSR, there are three good sized plants.
Okay.
Yeah, in Brazil, we have about 10 processing plants and for TSR, and for latex, 3 or 4. But the percentage of latex is very small. The production of latex in Brazil is about, I don't know, 1,000, at least almost 1,000 tons a year, something like that. And we are producing 200,000 of tons a year of dry rubber. So as you see, latex is less than 1% of the natural rubber production here. So it's basically all focused in TSR.
Here in Guatemala, we have, talking about production importance, like 10 processing plants, all of them producing TSR, and at least 6 of them can produce latex. It's very different from other countries. And I know there's some new projects for latex producer processing plants. It's coming up here in Guatemala. So latex importance here in Guatemala is raised and basically given by the prices that we are having here.
Thank you for the information. I'm glad that you have all information you have with you. So some of the information I just asked because I don't know whether you have the information. The good thing is that you have all the information with you. Very good. So I had heard that the TSR factories in Latin American countries undertake extension services. They also undertake quality improvement programs. They undertake tapping skill improvement programs, and the similar effective training programs among the farmers. Means TSR factories are doing extension services which are, in the case of Southeast Asian countries, these services are done by the respective governments. So in Brazil or in other Latin American countries, such services are undertaken by TSR processing factories. So I also heard that TSR factories engage the services of agronomists to implement such programs among farmers. So could you please throw some more light on the working of this model and how are processing factories benefited from such a system?
Yeah, in the case of Brazil, as I was saying, because there is this big competition here among processing plants, in the history of the establishment here of the natural rubber market, it became a custom for the processing plant to offer assistance and orientation to the suppliers as something of to differentiate them from the competition and to create some sort of link with the farmer. So sometimes the farmer might be feeling prone to negotiate with another processing plant, but then he thinks, no, but I like this processing plant because they have this program that I'm participating and I feel linked to this company. So basically, as a tool for differentiate, as a commercial tool, I believe processing plants started working with these programs of offering assistance, and this is something that in the Brazilian case it has helped a lot, since we didn't have a very structured public policy for that, and so we had to complement with private strategies.
In the case of Colombia, some of the plants are owned by cooperative of farmers. So it's like a part of the farmers. So it's like a whole chain. So the plant has to share also, you know, with the farmers and improve their quality and work with them. So there is also, as I talked, institutions are always, you know, trying to help the farmers. But yes, TSR plants are always work with their farmers, because in some cases they own their plant. The farmers own the plant as a cooperative. So that's a difference. Yeah.
Yes, here in Guatemala, the three main processing plants provide technical assistance for the growers, for the producers. And yes, it also happened the same scheme here in Guatemala, in which some farmers are the owners of the processing plant. And for example, the main processing plant here in Guatemala has, I would say, has a close relation with the National Rubber Association. Through them, they provide technical assistance. And although this national association also provides technical assistance by itself. And in addition, that what is happening here in Guatemala is that this assistance is not only related to technical issues for rubber production, but it is also for rubber certification. And this is also provided by the processing plants to the producers in order to get them certified and to let them have more profits selling a certified product. Something that I would say by now.
That's quite interesting. In fact, actually, we are getting more insights of in our industry for countries through your answers. Your answers are providing more information, that is more information and more insights, in fact. So next important point we have to discuss is something interesting. If I am correct, Brazil's NR processing companies have a formal understanding with the auto tire companies in the country on the pricing of TSR by benchmarking it with the Cyclone TSR 25 Js. So there's a pricing arrangement with the processing factories and the tire companies. So Brazil is one country where consumption sector and the production sector coexisting. So that means in that system, there's understanding on pricing. So my understanding is that auto tire companies in Brazil purchase rubber from processing companies at a price which is derived from SICOM TSR20. So could you please explain this system? You may also explain the organization or agency which is coordinating and monitoring this pricing system. So during the second half of February, this February, SICOM TSR20 prices ruled considerably below the prices prevailed in the key Asian physical markets. So because of that, NR processing factories in Brazil might have realized much lower prices compared to the prices prevailed in the physical markets. So this is because of the benchmarking with the SICOM markets, SICOM prices. So my point is that SICOM TSR20 could not be a true reflective of the physical markets at times, not always, but occasionally. So could you please share your thoughts on this issue, and also at the beginning you can explain how this system is being, this pricing system is being operated. Thank you.
Yeah, something is interesting to always clarify about this issue is that first of all, it's not a pricing fixing as sometimes people understand. It's just a reference, and as a reference, obviously, it is not something that it doesn't put limits into the negotiation. So it's just a reference because, and one other thing that is important to say is that the price of rubber in Brazil is always higher than in Southeast Asia. And then you ask me, why is that? It's because it's more expensive to get rubber out of Asia and buy there and bring it here, because you have to pay for the transportation, all costs related. So it's always higher, and that happens because the market here is working, basically, in my conception. Because so if we take the thesis that it is strategical for the companies to have local raw material, and they are competing with each other to have a bigger market share, what happens when their prices go up in Asia? They will add that into their prices in Brazil to compete among each other and to see who is going to get a bigger share of the market, and even who's not going to get a share at all, because there are some smaller companies that are just unable to buy rubber here in Brazil, and because the price is higher than they would have if they import from other countries. And so this is one interesting point, because although we are benchmarking with SICOM, and that was in the past few months was perceived, to buy TSR here in Brazil, basically what we have is pricing formulas where you have SICOM, you have dollar exchange rate, and then you have a plus that is calculated among the parties, the private parties, throughout their negotiations. So it's a commercial strategy. I can today, for instance, this plus is like 20%. So in other areas, it was like 5%. So it depends on how is the market, and so it fluctuates. So it's not fixed. And even to buy couplings, you have the reference, and then you have a percentage of participation over the reference. Today, the percentage of participation of couplings over the reference is 100%. And Pablo can tell us about Guatemala market that it is no different. Right, Pablo?
Yes, Here in Guatemala, we have a free market, talking about pricing, and it totally depends on offer and demand that the processing plants have, and basically that is the way that the price is fixed here in Guatemala. For example, by now, the main processing plants are paying $2.25 for dry kilo of latex. And if you go back and see the price at SciComm, it is very under this price here in Guatemala.
Yeah, and then at the end you say, well, how can you pay for raw material 100% of the benchmark for processed rubber? But basically, because what John said, because SciComm is so much under the physical market, that the processed rubber is it's more expensive, so there is more margin for to purchase raw material. And in regions where you have fierce dispute for this raw material, what you're gonna have a good system that transmits this profitability downstream, upstream.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Joko, and the additional inputs from Pablo. In fact, actually, your answer, Joko, your answer is quite educational, because it is not the price fixing, it is only a reference, and the actual transaction is based on the negotiation between the buyer and seller, not according to, but just a reference. Thank you for this explanation. In fact, you have also mentioned about the formula. So right now, maybe I would like to, in that context, I would like to ask, are daily prices officially reported by governments or any other agency in Brazil, Guatemala, or Mexico, or Colombia? Is there any official today's market price? Is there any official reporting by any agency? So if not, from which source farmers and processing factories come to know the most recent development in the global NR markets? What is the information source? Thank you. Your microphone is muted.
Sorry.
Mr. Jogo.
In Brazil, we have the National Association Abrabor that publishes this reference, this benchmark from SciComm that is calculated together with the dollar exchange rate and another 10% of costs of that we call costs of production. And also, since June 2019, the National Rubber Association started to publish the cost, an average cost of import. And that was something of, the idea was to monitor how much in an average was the cost of imports here in Brazil. And in the past few months, what we saw is that the cost of imports went up, and that explained to us why the percentage to sell TSR, why the percentages, variable percentages in the pricing formula were going up. Basically because as we were monitoring, the cost of imports were also moving up. So this is basically the most traditional and the source from where the most producers get their information from. But I think with internet and everything else, especially in Brazil, and after John started coming here, people are also on his Facebook page monitoring the international market through his posts.
Thank you, Jacob. and thank you for making the reference about my FB page. Thank you. So we have a few, 2 or 3 more questions. So Latin American countries are much ahead in adopting sustainable practices in the energy sector. So we have an expert in the carbon, actually forestry certification in the panel itself. So I had the opportunity to visit a lattice processing factory in Brazil, which reuses its entire wastewater by recycling it. Nearly 80% of the water required in the plant is met by recycled water. The striking point is that the company is voluntarily doing it without any regulatory requirements. Could you please elaborate on the status of the four Latin American countries in formulating and implementing the norms, standards, or criteria for sustainable natural rubber? What are the status of the 4 countries in that, and how the 4 countries already introduced the certification system for SNR and for the forestry certification of rubber plantations? So could you please throw some light on the status of the 4 countries? Thank you.
Yeah, I think Brazil is I think it's in the back of in the region here regarding to that. I think Colombia and Guatemala are so more advanced that I think this topic is more well commented by Maria and Pablo.
I think Guatemala is the leader in the region for certification. So maybe Pablo will talk more about that. In Colombia, we are working we are working on forest certification for plantations and plants and the chain of custody. And I know that we are very close to get some of the certifications, but I will let Pablo talk about that because we don't have so much time. So, and I know that he has more experience on that.
Thank you. And I would add, in the case of Brazil, is unfortunately for them that they are not certified already a lot of properties. But in my experience, given that I have done an assessment and a due diligence back in Brazil, I have done that in order to get notice about the possibility of certification for Brazilian producers. I would say that their compliance of the law and regulation, national regulation for them it's very high, different from other countries, different from other countries' producers. And I would say that if Brazil make an effort on that, I think they would be so close and a lot of opportunity for them on that issue. For Guatemala, yes, foreign certifications, yes, they are available. They have been done, FSC and also CCBS for our clients as a carbon credit participants. But talking about national efforts, I would say that the National Association of Rubber Producers have developed a private scheme named In Compliance, which is available for any producer that will require this certification. And I would say also that Guatemalan Forest Responsible, GFR, which certificates the management not only for rubber producer, but for timber and for forest producer in general. It's also available, and it would also be applicable for the rubber producers. And nationally, we do have those schemes, and of course, foreign certifications. We have almost all, but not yet PFC, which is the other certification here. I think for Brazil, PFC would be an option because they already have the national standard and already validated for any forest producer, which is also applicable for rubber production. So in the case of Colombia, yes, they are making efforts on the FFC certification as an association. They have a lot of opportunities also. I have been there, and I would say that perhaps some national standard of them for forest producer would be easily become PFC accredited. That is what I would like to say by now.
Okay. Thank you for the information. Thank you for the information. So in fact, actually, that is a useful information. In fact, actually, you have provided the status of the 4 countries. In fact, that is useful. So maybe we'll quickly go through the remaining points. Could you please share? Another important point: are suitable lands still available in the 4 countries for further expansion of rubber cultivation? So what are the policies of the governments in the 4 countries on further expansion of rubber cultivation? So if the government is encouraging, so are suitable lands still available for further expansion? Maybe you can briefly answer the question, answer this point, discuss
I
on
think
this
this
point.
one point that in Brazil we excel is that we have a lot of space. So there is in the area that we currently produce the most part of our natural rubber today, that is this area of São Paulo, Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, Minas Gerais. This area today has a big incidence of what we call degraded cattle pasture, and that is about 40 million hectares. Degraded cattle pasture is something that is something of a problem regarding not only environmental but social and economic issues, because it's basically a land that produces nothing. If we had the proper policy, we would be able to use part of that land to produce rubber, and that would be, I think, to our economy, to our society, and for our environment, something very sound to do. But still, we haven't found a way of taking advantage of that strategical profile that we have, and I believe Colombia has done something interesting in that way of taking advantage of so much area. I do believe that Colombia is also a country that has a lot of space to expand with natural rubber. Guatemala, then Pablo can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that there is not so much space to expand, but still some expansion going on. Interesting to highlight, Mexico is a country that has also good possibility of expansion. So other areas, small areas in Latin America, like that they are starting to expand, Panama, Costa Rica, Ecuador, maybe we'll be seeing those guys in the future.
Yes, here in Guatemala, yes, as Diogo mentioned, we don't have enough space, and we went to Mexico recently, and they have a lot of suitable land, a lot, and they could become a big producer in the region. And they also have some government support, I think, in order of providing plants. I think that is the program that they have. Here in Guatemala, we have, as I mentioned before, we have a payment as a forest incentive, but for some part of Guatemala.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the answer. In fact, actually, except for Guatemala, all the three countries have suitable lands available. And also we have, Jogo has mentioned about new countries coming up, new producing countries, possibility of new producing countries coming up in the region. That is quite interesting. So maybe you can share some information about the status of the rubber downstream rubber product manufacturing countries in the four countries. In fact, at the beginning, I have mentioned about the consumption. In fact, actually, Brazil is consuming double the quantity it is producing. So maybe a brief idea about the status of the manufacturing countries in the manufacturing sector in the four countries. Maybe Maria, maybe having some information on that, or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Latin America rubber sector is quite not homogeneous. Brazil is a big producer of tires and also automotives. Mexico is growing a lot. I mean, there's a lot of new manufacturing plants in Mexico, new, very beautiful tire plants in Mexico. So I think Mexico and Brazil, of course, they are the biggest manufacturing producers, and they are still growing. In the rest of the region, of course, we have big and small producers. Probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the manufacturing sector was not so doing well because all the China competition mostly. But then the manufacturing sector changed and improved and changed to different kind of products, and so I think that the sector is doing good and is stronger than it was 20 years ago. And of course, you see very very beautiful and big plants in Mexico and in Brazil, and of course Colombia, Ecuador, Peru has a very strong. Also, Peru has a very strong rubber manufacturing base.
Okay, thank you. I think that would be enough. That would be enough. Thank you for the information shared, Maria. So, and maybe in the earlier answer, earlier discussion, Jogo has mentioned about the prevailing wages. So please share information about the prevailing wages of tappers in the four countries. Jogo has mentioned that it comes to around $600 per month. So my question, in all the four countries, are the wages of tappers paid based on a monthly basis, or they are based on the number of trees they tapped, or based on the latex they get from tapping, or it is something like a fixed monthly wages? So does Latin America face any shortage of laborers? For example, in Malaysia and some of the major producing countries, they are facing severe shortage of laborers. So what about the availability of laborers, especially the position of the skilled tappers? Is there any shortage? Do you think the shortage of skilled tappers would be a major challenge to the NR production sector in Latin America in future? And does any of the four countries depend on migrant tappers or other plantation workers from other countries? So means my question is whether any of the four countries depend on migrant tappers or other plantation workers from neighboring countries. Thank you.
I will start first now. Yes, about what it is the pay base here in Guatemala. Almost all the tappers are employees for the farms, so their pay is based on trees tapped, basically. We don't have any association with the tappers, or the tappers are employees. I think that Diogo would mention something different perhaps for Brazil, in which they have another schemes, but here in Guatemala is that the case. And we do not depend on migrant tappers now, or jet. I am saying jet because perhaps one of my final conclusions would be that the most challenge here in Guatemala in the future is to keep this specialized and skilled labor that we have, because we have a lot of immigration problem, given that these usually tappers are traveling to the United States mainly, and by now this is a big problem. So back to the question, and I said the prevailing wages, I would say about 8.5 and $12.5 per day per labor. That is the price paid here in Guatemala. The official, the legally price is $12.5 per day.
Yeah, Mr. Pablo, that's quite clear. Any information you would like to add something, Mr. Jocko and Maria? Okay.
Yeah, in Brazil, basically we have mostly crop sharing, especially in São Paulo region. There is, but it's a crop sharing done with some particularities, because there is a contract. The tapper, he will, when he sells his production, he will emit an invoice and will even pay a small percentage of tax, so that the government will provide him with social assistance and so forth. So basically that's what happened in São Paulo and some other regions. In Goiás, our second biggest producing region, it's like Pablo said, they are all employees. So there is a big difference in both these areas. But Goiás is about 8% of natural rubber production in the country. São Paulo being 67%, I'll say crop sharing is the majority of our production here.
So we have, thank you for the information shared. So now we have only one more question. Looking long term ahead, how large will be the Latin America's NR industry by the year 2040? So in terms of area, production, consumption, export. So by 2040, how large will be the Latin American NR industry? And what are the plans of the four countries for the long-term future? And what are the challenges in the way forward? And what are the strategies for managing those challenges? Maybe something about the future, you can share your thoughts, or maybe the association SLTC's thoughts, you can share some of the information just to how to know what would be the future of the NR industry in the Latin America. Thank you. And that's the last question.
Oh, I mean, I think that the future is, I would like to see it very bright for the Latin American natural rubber market. Every country that you go is increasing their planting area. They are working hard. Every country is working hard on having a more solid base on the, not only on the plantation side, but also on the manufacturing side. So I think that we are growing a lot, and that countries are also working on making the industry a little bit differentiate for other countries. We see in Guatemala they are, very focused on latex. So in Colombia, we are working a lot on FSCC and also in producing different kind of product. Brazil is also very focused on tires. So I think that as a whole, we are working very hard to increase our production, which is, I think, is we cannot say that in 20 years we're going to be big like you know, Asia, but I think that we will have a bigger market share. That's my my thought.
Okay.
Yeah, by 2030, I think we'll have an additional, I don't know, 200,000 hectares. For the next 5 years or so, I think it's what is predicted. The thing is, we have the same problem as I think most of the natural rubber producing countries. Our expansion of natural rubber production capacity is too sensitive to price fluctuation. So this is something that I think all commodities go through, but especially in rubber. And that's something that has to do with the other point that we were discussing. In rubber, we have one thing that's very interesting, is that the cost of production has a big share of cost of manpower. And so this is something that I've discussed this, for instance, in India. With the emergency of economy and obviously manpower getting more expensive, then your main producing region starts to have difficulties in expanding, because cost of production gets higher and less competitive with other regions where cost of production is lower because manpower is cheaper. So we need to find ways to tackle that, because obviously we don't want to be following cheap manpower. Basically, that's not our objective as an industry, I believe. But we need to find a solution for that, because our models of expansion are, again, too sensitive to price fluctuation. So as John has been showing us since 2015, 16, when we first met, what happened in Asia happened here too. When prices came down, people stopped planting, and we missed the opportunity to continue to advance and to expand. And so if we don't find a way to tackle that characteristic of our industry, and then I'm not saying only Latin America, I think is the whole world, then natural rubber is going to have a difficult time expanding, and then we're gonna maybe experience some hard times in the years to come, as it has been elaborated in some studies, where we find these ever expanding deficits of production, and for countries that are in a region that is import dependent, that is something very threatening, is very dangerous, because another way, our consuming industry, if we don't have enough production for them, they are going to be consolidated elsewhere and not on our region, because of this big deficit. So I think this is something that we have to solve, and we don't have much time to do that. So we need to put our heads together, and integrating the region, I think, is a good step forward. So the work that SLTC is doing, I think, is very nice. I feel very happy to be a part of it. I think it's what we can do, is get all our heads together around this problem and create some alternatives.
So thank you for that information about the long-term future. In fact, actually, maybe I will take Jogo's points in a different way. Suppose the price is becoming so attractive, which is expected maybe after 2024, the globally rubber is going to be in short supply. So price can go any limits. Maybe after 2024, we are expecting such a global shortage. So in that case, if the Brazil rubber production sector is price sensitive, that means it can bring in more area And maybe you have mentioned in the by 2030, nearly 200,000 hectare will be additionally added to the area. So maybe instead of 200,000, it may be more. So maybe that case, and also Brazil has so much area. Only concern is environmental concerns. This is a major threat. So that means anyway, let us see how the prices are going to perform. So that means with that we have come to all the discussion points, and let me now come to the concluding part. So frankly speaking, I felt I was in Latin America in the last 3 hours. I was in Latin America because the information and insights shared by Maria, Jogo, and Pablo created such a feel that we are seeing what we are talking. So we had all the 3 resource persons presented things with a video and visuals. So we feel that we were there. In fact, you have unfolded a gold mine of information, insights about the Latin American industries. All the points were clear and illustrative, and that speaks for your practical exposure and the grassroots level understanding of all the processes. In fact, I have seen Jogo tapping the trees. People in Brazil I have seen is that they undertake all activities. They are experts in all activities, even not being an owner of or executive director, but he knows how to tap a rubber tree just like a skilled tapper. So this is something I have noticed in Brazil and Latin American countries. So we hope that Latin America will emerge as a major player in the global industry in future. And on behalf of the audience and the technologists, I thank you, Maria, Jogo, and Pablo, for devoting your valuable time with us and the generous sharing of the insights. In fact, actually, a special thank to Pablo, because he was informed about this program only 24 hours before, because Mr. Casio was supposed to be in the panel. He could not join due to a flight schedule, and he was actually during this time he was not on the earth. He was in the flying, so he could not join. With the short notice, Mr. Pablo joined. Thank you very much, and you have shared a lot of information, useful information. And may I ask, would you, Maria, Jogo, and Pablo, would you like to say a final word to the participants who have been listening and watching to you? Moreover, those who are watching here, nearly a large number of people will be viewing this through YouTube. Because of the time zone, they could not, some of them could not join, so they'll be listening to this, viewing this video in the next few days. So would you like to say a final word to the participants who have been listening and watching to you?
Oh, first of all, I would like to thank you, John, and thank you, TechnoBiz, for the invitation. It was very insightful. You know, we are talking so much about Latin America all the time, and we are passionate about rubber, but we are also passionate about Latin America. So any question you have, we have a very important people, very knowledgeable people in the association that you can go and talk to. So I'm not the most knowledgeable in natural rubber, but we have a lot of people that would love to talk about this. So first of all, thank you to everybody here, and of course to you for the invitation, and TechBiz. And Paran is there. Paran is there behind cameras, and thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Jogo, would you like to say anything?
Thank you guys very much for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure. And I would like also to point out that to the audience, if you are interested to know more about Latin America rubber, on May 26th, SLTC, together with RSG, APABOR, Agremial de Oleros de Guatemala, and IRDB, are organizing a program that is going to be like a side event to the World Rubber Summit. So on May 26th, so I would invite everybody. It is a free event, so you can take part of it is going to be virtual, hybrid. So I would like to invite everybody, just look out for the announcements that ISG will probably come forth in the next weeks. And I hope to see you all there to talk a little bit more about Latin America rubber. Thank you very much.
And from my side, I thank too for the invitation. As Mr. Jacob mentioned, Cassius Coparin couldn't make it. He's coming back to his home, coming from Bolivia, and he was doing an assessment of rubber plantation over there. I haven't had notice from Bolivia that they have plantations, but we in Plantec, as an advisor company, we provide support in all the Latin American countries, producers, and also in some others, in Africa, for example. And I do appreciate the invitation. And yes, in Plantec, we are also available if somebody has questions or some request for forest and production advisory, we are able to do that.
Thank you again, Maria, Joko, and Pablo. And thank you and goodbye. In Portuguese language, I should say ciao ciao. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Adios.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Yeah, bye. So now we have reached the end of episode 3 of NR Dialogue. So we look forward to welcoming you to the next episode of NR Dialogues very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you.